Charlie Bailey, welcome to ITV Gold. I hope you're doing well today.
Thank you for having me, Aditi. Really appreciate it.
Of course, we have you because you are running for Georgia's Attorney General, and we have so many questions for you, Charlie. But just starting this interview, I have to ask you, a big moment happened yesterday in terms of police reform, in terms of getting a word on systemic racism, in terms of seeing if justice was going to be delivered, and that was the trial of Chauvin. Former police officer Chauvin has been charged with all 3 charges that he was convicted with. My question to you is, how are you looking at this? And as a possible, potential attorney general, how are you understanding this entire situation? What kind of message does it send?
Well, I'll say that I think, like a lot of Americans yesterday, maybe exhaled, felt a sense of relief when our fellow citizens in that jury in Minneapolis returned a verdict holding Officer Chauvin accountable for his actions. And we have a lot of policies we need to change, laws that we need to change, and hearts that we need to change. But it was a small, but I think significant step towards recognizing, kind of these basic values of human commonality, that if any of us are going to matter, then George Floyd's got to matter. If the American dream is going to matter, if the ideals that we say, equal protection under the law, that everybody deserves the same manner of justice, if any of those words are going to matter, then it had to matter what happened to George Floyd. And I've been thinking about his family and the strength that they have shown throughout this. And I just pray that yesterday brings them. You can't bring George Floyd back. There's nothing that'll ever make it okay. But I hope that verdict gives his family at least some measure of peace about the tragedy that's happened in their life, and the rest of us got a lot of work to do to make sure we don't have any more George Floyds, and that we make some of the systemic changes that we need to make in our criminal justice system.
And exactly what I was going to ask you as my next question. The criminal justice system is quite broken when it deals with the Black and brown communities. As an attorney general, you will be dealing directly with the criminal justice system. What kind of changes do you want to make?
Well, one of the big things that I'm talking about, and of course I was the Democratic nominee last time in 2018 and got 49% of the vote while on the ticket with Stacey Abrams, my friend Stacey Abrams. And in that campaign, I talked about this, and I'm speaking about it again, and that is that, in Georgia, we don't have a civil rights division in our attorney general's office. When I'm elected attorney general, I'm going to build a civil rights division in that office. And, to be the cradle of the civil rights movement in the Empire State of the South, and to not have a civil rights division means you don't prioritize civil rights, to me, is a dereliction of duty. And with that civil rights division, I'm going to advocate for the passage of a state civil rights bill, which we do not have, that'll give my division the tools it needs to go after employment discrimination, to go after discrimination in housing, discrimination in lending, to do pattern and practice investigations of rogue police agencies or rogue elements within those police agencies. So I think that is, the other part of this is you got to be, I think, you're the top prosecutor in the state. You're the top law enforcement official in the state. You have to be outspoken, and I will be outspoken about the need for criminal justice reform. You have a platform to use, and you ought to use it. My opponent never speaks about these issues. So there's direct action you can take, and then there's leadership that you can exhibit. The reason I have the endorsement of, some of these new DAs that flipped seats, Republican to Democratic in Georgia, whether that be Fani Willis and Fulton, who didn't flip the seat, but she beat an incumbent in a primary. Flynn Brody, who's the new Cobb DA, Dolly Racine, the new DA in Douglas County. These are all Metro Atlanta counties. One of the reasons of that is they know through my time as a prosecutor, I've actually not just read about criminal justice reform, but in the practice, put it into practice and made some of those decisions. And so I will be a leader on those efforts, whether we're talking about that civil rights division, whether we're talking about issues around restorative justice. Those is far past time that the top prosecutor in our state be clear where we stand, and that is where I stand on the part of every person in the state ought to be able to expect that they can get that same manner of justice, and that their kids will be safe, when they walk down the street. And that covers all manner of reforms we need to make within policing as well.
Right, and just talking about the police reform, several attorney generals across the country in their states are trying to make police reform bills. They're trying to, get rid of that immunity that certain police officers have even after whatever they have committed. My question to you is, how are you going to handle this excessive use of force at times by law enforcement as an attorney general, and what do you think is the solution there?
Well, I think we need to start with passing the George Floyd Policing Reform Act federally, and there's some things that the federal government can put into place. But irrespective of that, I think in the state of Georgia, we need to standardize and update our use of force laws and policies. Right now, it's left up to some interpretation. And there's a lot of situations that I think, there are dangerous folks out there that the police have to apprehend, folks that have killed people, folks that have committed sexual assaults. And that's a part of the job. But there are some encounters that aren't that. And having the training and then the requirements so that police know how to de-escalate. And are there situations where, I'll give you an example. There's a lot of sheriffs that I talk to, and one of the first issues they bring up is that their jails are filled with people that are not awaiting trial on a murder charge. They're not awaiting trial on a rape charge. They have mental health issues, and their families don't have the means or the wherewithal to take care of them. And so they enter into this kind of revolving door through the county jail, and they come in and then they go out, and then a little while later they come back in because there's not that infrastructure and services available to them. If we invested in some of these calls, maybe without a police officer or with a police officer, having a social worker go out, having a licensed clinical therapist or psychologist, folks that are trained to deal with people that might just be having some sort of episode, and they don't need a gun drawn, and frankly, we don't need our officers dealing with those issues. We need our officers going after the dangerous people that we do need to get off the street. So I think providing funding from the state level, because a lot of these local governments, they don't have the money to do that. Providing funding for this at the state level does two things. It gets the right kind of professionals out to those incidents, and it frees up beat officers and detectives to work on apprehending violent criminals, which is what we want them spending their time.
Right, and this brings me to another big topic that has recently also affected the state of Georgia: mass shootings. We saw in Atlanta, we saw across the country, there have been a lot of mass shootings in the last couple of weeks. What's your take on gun reform law, and how are you going to handle that as an attorney general?
I appreciate this question. And I'm endorsed by Congresswoman Lucy McBath, who's a good friend and one of the nation's leader on these issues. And I fully support what she's been doing at the federal level, both to universalize background checks, close the so-called Charleston loophole, which, if you allow me a minute, what we're talking, sometimes people use phrases and everybody's like, what is that? That refers to how Dylann Roof was able to get a weapon and then murder those parishioners in Mother Emanuel in Charleston, South Carolina a few years ago. the reason that was, able to happen is that right now there's an expiration date on a background check. If the background check's not completed a certain number of days, then the person that is trying to get that gun automatically gets the weapon, as opposed to letting the background check play out, and then the result of it may be they don't need to get a weapon. But the FBI and the ATF have to have the time to do that. I've got a lot of friends that are detectives, and a lot of them work on these joint task force. I've got one friend that, we did a lot of organized crime cases together. He was also joint ATF, and he went after some really dangerous folks that committed murder and that kind of thing. But he told me the most dangerous calls he went out on were those that he had to do for the ATF when the time period had expired. Someone had gotten their gun before the background check could be completed. Then it's completed and they realize, oh no, this person's not supposed to have this weapon. And he had to go out to this individual, which they said now can't have a weapon, and say, hey, I'm going to need that weapon back. He said that was actually the most scared he ever is in the field. So it's closing the Charleston loophole. It's universal background checks. I also support limiting of magazines, the size of magazines. I've had several cases, but one case in particular, when I was a senior assistant district attorney in Fulton County, where there was a drive-by shooting. The person that ended up getting shot was a complete innocent bystander, shot in the back of the head. But for the grace of God, he wouldn't be living. He is living. He survived that. There was a chase. And when the police were able to apprehend the folks that had committed the drive-by shooting, in the car they found 9mm with 50-round drums. 50-round drums stopped to the bottom of them. All that is for is mass killing. And they also, that allows them to outgun law enforcement, which do not have 50-round drums on their guns. So there are things that we can do that will save people's lives. Red flag laws being another. People who committed domestic violence do not need weapons. I've prosecuted those cases of domestic violence, and oftentimes preceding the murder will be some other instance of domestic violence, identifying those folks and getting weapons out of their hands if they are a danger to their spouse or those around them. Those are some things that we can do while also preserving the right of law-abiding citizens to protect themselves in their homes, which I, of course, support.
Such a complicated issue, but I truly appreciate your perspective here because it is a solution that you are giving. Charlie, if I was to ask you what motivates you to run for this particular seat, what would you say?
Well, it's the same thing that motivated me to run last time in 2018, and that is that more than anyone, the Attorney General is supposed to be the individual who is trying to get justice, whether that be in the civil system or in the criminal system, for those that frankly don't have anybody else standing up for them. And it is that if you really boil it down, it is as Dr. King taught us that this garment of destiny that we're in, this human commonality that we share, that we're all human beings, and we all have human beings that love and need us. And it is the job of the Attorney General that if those human beings, or if they're not treated with the same fairness, if they're not treated with the same respect, if they don't have the same access to clean drinking water, if they don't have the same right to health care, if their voting rights are being threatened, if their civil rights are being threatened, the Attorney General is supposed to be there. That is what is those values that we all breathe the same air, and we all love our families, and we all deserve that right to leave a life for our kids a little bit better than what we had, regardless of what we look like and where we come from, the zip code, and how we worship, who we love. And those are the values that have driven my career, both in private practice, getting civil justice and criminal justice system as a senior assistant district attorney, and have driven, frankly, my life. And that's what's driven me to run. What drove me to run for Attorney General in 2018, what drove that campaign, and what drives me to run now.
And in this fight for justice, Charlie, I'd like to know how you hope to connect with the Asian American community, including the South Asian American community of Georgia, especially after the recent shootings in Atlanta. What do you think the community needs right now?
Well, I think the community needs, if I can, say so, is one, for folks to listen to them. And far too often, I think politicians come in and they say, we know what you need, and let me just tell you about it. So first, I think, we need to listen. I include myself in that. What are the needs and wants and fears and expectations of the Asian American community here in this state? And what I can say, from my perspective, is in particular that civil rights division. I mean, I think that what my commitment would be is I think the Asian American community should be able to rely on the fact that their Attorney General understands the discrimination faced by those in immigrant communities, and that at the end of the day, I mean, I think vast majority of members of the Asian American community in Georgia want to do is they want life to be safe for their kids. They want them to do well in school, and they want a fair shot at what we call the American dream. And when discrimination goes unchecked, and you don't have those in power that are supposed to protect people, you don't have them standing up and standing with communities that are threatened by discrimination, then you embolden it. And I'll say this, we have seen that rise of anti-Asian hate all over our country, and we've seen it here, unfortunately, in Georgia, and had deadly consequences not that long ago. But we didn't just find out about it a few weeks ago. The FBI director, who is from Georgia, has testified under oath twice in the last 8 months that the number one domestic terrorist threat facing the people of the United States is the violence posed by white supremacist domestic terrorist organizations. And, one of the things I'm going to do is build an organized crime division in the Attorney General's office that doesn't exist right now. And the guy I'm running against, the current Attorney General, who I ran against last time, not only does he not have one investigation going on to go after those white supremacist domestic terrorist groups that fuel that hate that we see carried out in some of these violent acts, not only does he not have one investigation, he hasn't said one word about it. So I think first, listen. Second, stand up for what is right, and be an ally for those that face discrimination, real discrimination. And third, use, what is I was taught growing up, words without deeds, they are dead. And so be prepared to take the actions that will protect people. And so the signal goes out that we're not going to tolerate that in the state of Georgia, that we are going to be an open place where folks can raise their families, build a business, and leave a life a little bit better for their kids than they had. But that takes, acknowledging that discrimination exists and then being tough about coming down on it and ending it.
Right. You just mentioned the current Attorney General of Georgia, A.G. Carr. He has been accused of having an involvement with the Capitol insurrection, which took place on January 6th. I'd like your comments on that.
Yes, and I appreciate that question. That ties into kind of what I just said as well. Chris Carr is the chair of the Republican Attorney Generals Association, and that organization helped fund and promote the Stop the Steal rally that became the violent insurrection at our nation's capital on January 6th. And the time in between, I would say before the election, before November, they were stirring up these anti-American anti-representative democracy forces. And in the time post-November, they ratcheted it up even more. And he sat there as chair and allowed it to happen. And then since it has happened, so in that interim period, he didn't say one word to say, you know what, not only is it wrong to question a legitimate election, and because if we don't have representative democracy, if we don't have that equal right to vote, and if we all aren't considered equal under the law, and we don't consider some people's votes to matter as much as other people, then what are we even doing here? What? This isn't even a representative democracy. So he didn't speak out against that. He didn't speak out when the president refused to denounce white supremacists. And refusing to speak out when you have a position of power to do so, that, and then actually having an organization that emboldens those people, you end up with a situation like January 6th where those, I would say, those criminals and those un-American people that stormed the Capitol felt that they had backup to do it because folks weren't telling them not to. That is extremely dangerous. And I think that alone is a dereliction of duty. And you ceded your power, you ceded your authority to hold elected office. Anybody that didn't stand up to that assault on our democracy, which is really just assault on all of us. Even if we didn't have all the other issues that I disagreed with Chris on, just that alone, to me, if you can't stand up to that, what do we even have you there for?
If you were elected as the Georgia Attorney General, how many changes are you going to make in your first 100 days?
That's a really good question. Nobody's asked me that specific question before. Well, a lot. I would say if we're still in that litigation, on the first day, I'm going to withdraw. I'm going to take us out of the side of the litigation that is working to overturn and throw out Obamacare, which would kick off 500,000 Georgians off the Affordable Care Act exchange and put at risk another 4 million Georgians that have pre-existing conditions. So that we do that on the very first day. I will build and start in the first 100 days, that Civil Rights Division. I will build and start within the first 100 days, Organized Crime Division. And I will get us out of litigation that is pending in Connecticut right now, where Carr has us taking the side of a gun manufacturer that has been sued by some of the parents of the murdered children of Sandy Hook. There's pieces of litigation like ACA, like that case, some environmental cases where we will immediately get out and stop spending taxpayer money on that. And then we're going to do a top to bottom review of the office and see what else needs to be changed. And we're going to start evaluating whether we're talking about environmental torts, corporate pollution, whether we're talking about predatory debt collectors and payday limiters, whether we're talking about pharmaceutical companies that engaged in the deceptive marketing of opioids or price fixing. All those investigations will start, and I'm going to be aggressive in going after people that are exploiting the people of Georgia. But those are just some of the things that I can absolutely do in the first 100 days, or at least start the process to do in the first 100 days.
Finally, my last question to you actually is your comment on if you think voting rights in Georgia are being violated right now with the recent suppression bills that we have seen come out of Georgia. How do you hope to handle that during your own election?
Well, I do think the bill that was passed, SB 202, is a voter suppression law. It is voter suppression, maybe in a suit. The way that we're going to handle it is working with our partners with the Democratic Party, mean, the one thing that we built up quite the infrastructure over the last, Stacey's been building it for a while, but it really got up and going in 2018. Stacey Abrams, who I'm referring to, in 2018, the infrastructure built that propelled a lot of us through that election, and it got only stronger last year when we won the presidency here, released the electoral votes here, and the 2 Senate seats in January. We have a robust infrastructure, and I think a lot of these things, it's going to take just old-fashioned organizing. On the IDs, there's about 200,000 Georgians that don't have a driver's license, and if they're going to vote absentee, we're going to need to do the organizing to get out to them and help them in that process, and make sure they have the ability to vote. Educating voters on the new rules around how many drop boxes there are, all that voter education is going to be critical. And I know that the state party is led by very good folks and friends, and they're going to lead that effort. And we're going to supplement. I'll certainly be talking about it every event that I have so people understand what the changes are. And I'll say this, Democrats didn't win, and President Biden didn't win the electoral votes here, and Senator Ossoff and Senator Warnock did not win those Senate seats because of absentee balloting. They won those seats because the people of Georgia now, by and large, agree with our view of an egalitarian view of society, that we all are actually created equal and we all deserve those same kinds of opportunities. That's why the Republicans lost. And we have the muscle and the organizational strength to get over these obstacles. If we do not win in court, which I'm not giving up that fight, we've got good friends fighting that in court. But the Republicans, if they think this is going to be some sort of panacea, I think they're in for a rude awakening come 2022.
Yeah, well, here's to hoping that everyone can vote, because that is so, so, so important. Thank you so much for giving us your time, and I wish you the best with your campaign, and we look forward to following more on your campaign trail.
I'll come back anytime. Thank you, Aditi.